Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. Waiting on a couple people to come in, and we should get started here in a moment. Alrighty, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Galvan. I'm the VP of Engineering with Prescriptive Data Solutions. Thank you, everybody, for attending the call. Today, we'll be doing a brief overview of Prescriptive Data Solutions and then diving into Zerto and the recovery capabilities that it affords. The Prescriptive Data Solutions is a regional reseller and consulting company based in Texas. We have about 56 employees, and we were founded in 2017. We mainly cover the TOLA area. That includes Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, as well as Kansas and Missouri. We're engineering led, meaning that we're not necessarily about specific products. We're about solutions and outcomes. Many of our employees and our engineering staff come from end user environments, much like yourself. And we really like to kind of take the approach of putting ourselves in your shoes, looking at the various options and putting the best things together, right? So it's not necessarily about what product it is, it's how it's used in exercise. So as kind of mentioned, we do everything from product sales to professional services, as well as managed services. We also cover multiple verticals, and we're not relegated to one. Certainly, I think today's call is SLED focused, but we also work with commercial customers and in particular do a lot with energy and healthcare. So Prescriptive's kind of broken down into 5 main practices. The first being kind of most central to today, which is data center. So we cover everything from storage, virtualization, compute, do a lot of disaster recovery. Obviously, it's an emphasis of the call. Do a lot within the cloud, specifically Azure, and are true believers in the hybrid cloud. So we do everything from data center design and migrations, as well as helping you leverage an AI footprint, both from a what is the infrastructure underneath AI, but also how you consume it as a business. So more on the business consulting front. We have a network and network security practice that's primarily route switch, firewalls, your SD-WAN, SASE, all the things to connect you and keep you connected in a protected way, and a big emphasis on cybersecurity. So we do things like run a program that's compliance as a service, where you're essentially on a platform and we take all your information, map that to whatever compliance framework, and ensure that those controls are in place. So not only are we able to do things like EDR and MDR, but really it's about the policy and implementation and then the auditability of those on an annual basis for things like your cyber insurance and really making sure that you're as well protected as you can be. In addition, we have a large Microsoft practice. We do a lot within Azure. We do a lot with Azure Local, and then everything traditionally Microsoft, including the modern work components, as well as on-prem Exchange AD, and we're able to do Microsoft licensing through our CSP program. And lastly, we do a lot of managed services, so we can do managed end-to-end, whether that's managed security, managed networking, managed infrastructure, managing your backups, providing infrastructure as a service, doing backup as a service, as well as DR as a service based on Zerto, as well as the compliance. I apologize for this popping up. If you see it, it keeps popping up because people are trying to come into the lobby. So I apologize for that. On the DC practice, we do a lot of workshops. So obviously, as most folks know, there's been a lot in kind of the landscape and marketplace, big changes with Broadcom. So we do one that's kind of state of the hypervisor, looking at options, not necessarily to say, hey, let's move away from VMware, but how can you maybe do optimizations on that licensing, right, to get the best value out of that core-based licensing. Maybe it's refactoring hardware, but also helping you potentially look at alternative hypervisors and things of that nature. We do a lot around BCDR and cyber resiliency. It's a big part of the call today, as well as an AI readiness. And then really kind of looking at things in terms of the modern data center. And what we mean by a modern data center is, you know, if you look historically, there's a lot of sprawl, right? Organically, things build up over time. You have lots of kind of point solutions. What we look to do is kind of simplify and consolidate that into, you know, common platforms. So that could be, you know, looking at, we're going to run all of our compute and storage on this particular stack. We're going to manage it all through this operational control plane, whether that's, you know, kind of looking at things as a private cloud within your environment. And then we do a series of health checks. So we can do that for your state of virtualization, as well as backup, as well as storage, and probably other things if you needed something specific. And then we do extensive assessments around business continuity and disaster recovery, as well as cloud readiness. We here at Prescriptive Data Solutions are, you know, very, very fond of Zerto. Really, we've seen a lot of success within our customer install base, helping them really develop and be able to execute a DR plan. And we're really leading that with Zerto wherever we can. And the reason for that is quite simple. Zerto is a best of breed disaster recovery platform, and we really like it because once you kind of put in what you're protecting, right? You do your virtual protection groups, you set those up. The real beauty in it is the ability to test it and practice it. So once we set those up, we're able to have those, you know, have VMs protect it from one site to another, whether that's site to site or site to Azure, and then we can bring them up in a bubble net, right? And what bringing them up in a bubble net does is it ensures, hey, we're able to test these applications end to end in a non-risky way, right? So we can bring them up, they're isolated, they're self-contained. We can make sure that those apps are fully functional, that all the dependencies are met, and that we can do that without disrupting production. And then once we take that step, right, and we document everything that it took to do that, we kind of develop a run book by doing that, right? And so what you can do is by regularly doing this testing, it's going to be the same thing in a real world scenario for failover, outside of how you have to change DNS or network connectivity. So we bring that into the fold, the network planning aspects of it as well, whenever we're working with customers. But really your practice and your DR execution when you run the Zerto platform, right? So you're going to be provided with reports. You can hand it off to compliance for the audits to show that you're doing regular DR testing. But not only that, that DR testing is providing real value in that you know exactly what that recovery process looks like, and you can rely on it in a time of need. We're also very fond and use Zerto for migrations. Quite often, whenever people are moving from data center to data center, maybe it's still VMware to VMware, and they want to do that as seamlessly and with as minimal impact as possible. Zerto is a great tool for that because, again, we can test bringing those things up. And then when we go to actually cut over, it's kind of anticlimactic, right? I've had a lot of customers comment that, wow, that was really easy, you know, to do, right? And they're almost let down by the lack of excitement, but really that's what you want, right? When you're moving, for it to be seamless and easy and you know the exact outcome. So in addition to being able to do that on like-for-like hypervisors, obviously Zerto provides a lot of conversion capabilities between Hyper-V to VMware, VMware to Hyper-V, as well as VMware to Azure. They also do that for AWS. And with that, I'll be handing off to the Zerto team. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining. And again, also thanks to Jillian for help coordinating today's webinar. My name is Justin Windsor. I'm our National Channel Director here at Zerto. What does that mean? It means I work with partners exclusively to bring our technology to market. And Prescriptive is a partner we like a lot. Joe, I'll use you as a point of reference. Can you hear and see my slides okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent, very good. I will kind of start with the word prescriptive, right? And I think, and I say this in a very nice way for our guest here today. There are a lot of choices out there when you're buying technology, whether that's servers, backup, storage, phone systems, whatever, right? But prescriptive is a very applicable name to what they actually do. They're very prescriptive in their approach. They want to understand the technology. They want to understand the pluses and minuses. And in many cases, prescriptive has this technology like they do Zerto in their lab. So if you get something out of today, we hope that you continue these conversations with prescriptive. We're big fans of them. They're a big partner here for HPE. Obviously, we're headquartered not too far from their office. So we are, again, big fans of Joe, Jillian, and the rest of the prescriptive squad. From an agenda perspective, we'll get to that here momentarily, but I think at the end of the day, data is a #1 form of currency in the world today. It is, right? It used to, you look at any organization, right? What I always like to say, kind of use this analogy, is every single customer, right, yourselves included, they build this castle, right? And in this castle is social security numbers, credit card information, student data, whatever it is, but it's all data. And then you do everything around this castle, right, to protect yourself. You get the firewalls, you get the antivirus, endpoint protection, backup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in that moment of peril, when you have some sort of outage, whether that's ransomware, whether that's a hurricane, tornado, whatever, and every customer at some point will have an outage, how do you make sure that you're able to achieve everything on this screen here? I need to deliver innovation. I need data to create profit for me. I need to streamline operations. I need to make better decisions. And Joe, you kind of hit on earlier, how can I actually leverage AI to do more, right? And I think data is the fuel. And what we're going to kind of show you today, I hope, is that Zerto is a technology that some might say it's a niche, some might say it's not necessary, but in that moment of peril, when you have an outage, there's nothing better in the market to get your data, your mission critical applications, your revenue generating services providing applications up and running quicker and faster than Zerto from HPE. And I always kind of like, from an agenda perspective, I always like to start on this slide. I'll let it kind of build out here. Is every single customer that we will talk to, they already have a backup solution. Now, whether that backup solution is a Commvault, a Cohesity, a Rubrik, Unitrends, that's fine. And what we are going to tell you today is continue to have your backup. Hopefully you've got that solution or are looking to explore that with a prescriptive sales rep. But backup inherently, at its core, technology-wise, is not made for instant recovery. It is not. You are going to get an average recovery point objective, or PO, right? And it's meant for, I have compliance, I have Sarbanes-Oxley, I have HIPAA, right? It's not made for, I need it now. And that's really the line in saying where backup and disaster recovery are different. And from a Zerto perspective, we are not looking to replace your backup. We are simply looking for those mission critical applications, which on average tends to be about 20-25% of a customer's environment. So what are those tier 0, tier 1, tier 2 applications that if it goes down, ransomware, hurricane, wildfire, power outage, whatever the use case might be, I need it up and running now. A great use case for this is Massachusetts State Police in October of last year was down for 3 days. Their CAD software was hacked. They could not respond to the phones coming in. Backup was not fast enough. That's the difference between backup and disaster recovery. And the name Zerto, right, actually stands for something. So I'll let you kind of think about what could Zerto actually stand for, and we'll come back to that when we wrap up here today. Really, the 3 key pillars, and not to belabor the point, because Joe, you made a very great explanation of Zerto earlier, but we've been in business since 2011, really focusing on disaster recovery, right? I also sometimes don't like the term disaster recovery because it's really about application recovery, rapid application recovery, because when you say disaster recovery, that could be the Servpro guy coming in because your basement got flooded, right? Through our newest release, which we'll show you in a minute, a very good story around ransomware. Of our verticals being attacked in the United States of America, the K-12 space is the #1 attack vector against ransomware. Of all governments being hacked globally, the United States government is #1. And Joe, you also kind of brought up, we are a software-based, hypervised hypervisor-based technology. So it really gives our customers the freedom to have that multi-cloud strategy and have their data when and where they want it to. And you can see some of the places that we are able to have Zerto really leveraging what we call continuous data protection. I would say there's others who market very similar messaging, but again, it's not apples to apples what we do here from Zerto and HPE. For those on the call today, if you do have any questions about Zerto, our technology, prescriptive, etc., please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of today's call. I mentioned before, we have been in business since 2011, acquired by HPE proper in 2021. So we're coming up to our 4-year anniversary, right? Yep, in October, a couple of weeks from now. And again, we are made for rapid application recovery. We're a software-based technology. So even though in this moment you see the green triangle from HPE, I have customers running Zerto or NetApp, on Pure, on Dell, or in the cloud. You're not locked in to any storage. You could have in your environment today say, hey, Justin, I have NetApp here in Austin, but I also have my disaster recovery site in Oklahoma City, and that's on Pure. That's fine. Again, we're really agnostic in that regard. And I love what you said earlier, Joe, is the ability to do automated testing. When have you ever been able to be much more proactive in your disaster recovery stance? Usually to do DR testing, it's a weekend exercise. It's the wife yelling at you because the kids acted up all weekend. But now have the ability to be much more proactive. And we actually have built in now into the HPE portal, but built-in compliance reports that you can actually show the auditors and say, look, yeah, this is what we have, again, ahead of time. Again, that's another value that Zerto can bring to market. If there's one slide that I hope the audience today really leaves this with, and again, for those attending, you'll also be getting a Grubhub virtual gift card as a way of thank you from Prescriptive as well as HPE, but it is in fact this slide, right? How does traditional backup work? Every single night, I would do a nightly backup. What changed during the course of the day, right? And at 6 a.m., in this example, can be 7, 8, doesn't really matter. I do some sort of snapshot. What changed overnight? But at 10 o'clock in the morning, something bad happens. So if you take the red box of Zerto out of it, you're already accepting a 4-hour data loss at a minimum. And it's going to take you a lot longer to figure out how they got in, how bad is it, what. And then again, you rehydrate all of those. I got to bring in the domain server. Then I got to bring the file server. Then I got to bring the email server. And Joe, you mentioned virtual groups. That's what we do. But inherently to Zerto's technology, and this is why it's such a great story around ransomware resilience, is we are basically taking 5-second checkpoints every single 5 seconds. So think of it like a DVR. Think of it like the pointers on YouTube. And a real world example, I like to really kind of drive the point home of why Zerto is different and faster than backup is years ago, while living in Maryland, I worked at a reseller. And I sold lots of storage tech tape libraries. And you know what we did? Customers backed it up to tape. Then at some point, it would go to Iron Mountain, and 60% of tape backups failed, right? But you still did it because that's what the technology was at the time. And then this thing called data domain came out, right? And now, oh, I can back up to disk. It's quicker. It's maybe more reliable. It's faster. And the same analogy I used to sell data domain back in the day, true story, is when I listened to music, initially, I listened to a tape, right? And song 1 on the audio cassette was really good. Song 2 was so great. So then I fast forward and I'm too much in song 3. Then I got to hit rewind. And then you know what they gave me? They gave me a CD and said, this is faster. Well, I can just skip to track 3. That's what Zerto does. It allows you to get to your mission critical applications within 5 seconds. So now in this example, instead of going back to 6 a.m. when production has been compromised in one shape or form, we send you the notification, right? Now you can rewind to 9:59:55 and run production from your disaster recovery site. Now use third-party tools. We also have a very great partnership with CrowdStrike to figure out, okay, let's get this out. But it gives you the ability to keep business running, keep services on. And in fact, for many of our customers, we're not losing money waiting for multiple hours. From a technology perspective, anyone wants to dive deeper into the weeds, our engineer Jamila, who lives in the Houston area, she certainly can schedule time with you as well as your prescriptive rep to really dive into this. But really just a couple of things to highlight here from a technology perspective. I kind of mentioned it before. This can run on any storage, right? If it's HPE, all the better. It doesn't have to be. You could have HP at one, another one at another place. You could have HP at site A. You could have the cloud someplace else. You could have 2 clouds, right? The second thing I want to point out is this journal. We're about real-time detection. You can only keep it for 30 days maximum. So you go, oh, Justin, well, this is Zerto's great. I have to keep it for compliance. Yeah, you need backup. right? So again, we're looking to complement and supplement your backup architecture to really give you mission critical applications at the lowest cost of downtime. And this really kind of takes what Zerto does and why it's a little bit unique, different, I would challenge, better than backups and replication of your storage, again, in that moment of peril. Because if you're doing daily backups, and this is an IDC stat, so it's not an HPE stat, there's going to be an associated RPO and RTO as well as loss per hour financially to it. Replicating your storage is better, is faster. Yes, it's something else, another layer you're purchasing, but the impact goes down. The benefit of Zerto, or a software-only solution that can be deployed same day, and no one will match us RPO and RTO-wise, and the impact to the business is far less than what it is waiting for replication or waiting for your backups to come online. One of our customers is United Airlines. They are protecting a subset of their applications. Again, 20-25% is our average with Zerto. They're protecting 4,100 VMs that they deemed mission critical. I need our customers to book flights, change flights, pay for luggage, pre-order their food, right? Revenue generating stuff. Their average recovery point objective with us for over 4,000 VMs is 8 seconds. That's the power of Zerto. It's giving you the ability to know we will have downtime, but now I am in control of how much I will accept. And if we have a customer who says, yeah, those applications can be down for a couple of hours, yeah, they're not good fits for Zerto. We're really trying to identify a subset, right? Again, I mentioned Massachusetts police before. Their CAD software got hacked. Another example in the SLED space, Baltimore County Public Schools got hacked a few years ago. It cost them $9 million in their recovery efforts. Their CIO was promptly let go. But the other soft cost, right, that maybe doesn't get talked as much, there's a very real world impact to these outages, these ransomware breaches, right? But Baltimore County Public Schools has to pay for an Experian credit report for every single boy and girl until they're 18 years old. Because guess what? Maybe Johnny bought an Xbox from China. And if you're a prospective mom and dad and you're thinking about moving and building a family, and you've got Montgomery County, Maryland, which is more expensive than Baltimore County on average, or Baltimore County, you're not moving to Baltimore. You're not. So there's a fallout. And again, we're able to mitigate that through a Zerto technology. Our pause, so I mentioned it before, we're going to kind of change gears a little bit to what we call the HPE Cyber Resilience Vault. I mentioned it before, just as kind of a recap before we kind of come to the next part of today's agenda. Zerto, we're a software solution. You can run it on-prem, in the cloud, any combination thereof. With Zerto, you can have Zerto in 3 locations. So you could have main data center in Texas, secondary data center in Oklahoma. You want to get out of Tornado Alley and you're leveraging AWS in Seattle, or a data center in Las Vegas, or Microsoft in doesn't really matter. You can change it, right? You can do proactive DR testing. And in the wake of Broadcom, we are seeing a lot of customers come to us and say, hey, I can't get completely off Broadcom. That's not going to happen overnight. That's a 1 to 3 to 5 year kind of program. But let me start parsing out the mission critical stuff, and I'm going to get it off Broadcom, and I'm going to move it to my cloud. Zerto can be the tool, and as one of my sales guys like to calls it a data chaperone. And I will also say, as we talk about virtualization and VMware, I'd be remiss to say that HPE has brought to market a product called VM Essentials, which is based upon Morpheus technology. So that's another layer that HPE is really helping our customers to solve. Maybe the Broadcom thing used to be good, right? But at the end of the day, Broadcom cares about their biggest customers, right? And they will even tell you that just as much, right? The smaller mid-market customers, if you leave, you leave, right? We have the solutions to HP, not only to get you to a hypervisor with VME, but to protect those from a Zerto perspective. And because of our partnership with HP integration thereof, we have now brought to market what we're calling, again, the Cyber Resilience Vault. I'll preface this by saying, we are not the only manufacturer that has a vault. Commvault has a vault. Cohesity has Fort Knox, right? Rubrik has a vault, right? Data Domain, Dell, they have their vault solutions, right? So we're not the only ones. But as we go through the next couple slides, I hope that you get out, whoa, the vault from HPE is different. And there's one unique difference that we have over others, and we'll get to that as we talk here later. Some of the challenges that our customers are kind of sharing with us, that, hey, 60% of my DR last year was because of ransomware, right? We talked about it earlier. U.S. government's being hacked. K-12 is being hacked. And if there's anyone on this call who says, I'm never going to get hit with ransomware, I would politely disagree. Because the guys and girls in China, Russia, wherever, they don't care who you are, right? And as I'll share an example in a moment, it's just not getting you to pay the ransom. It's just not getting you on the news channel, right? And guess what? Customers go, I'm going to pay I'll pay the ransom. Well, do you honestly think all of a sudden these guys are good and they're going to give you everything back? No, only 4% actually get all their data back. If you get hacked and your backup's been compromised, the average time to then recover is close to a month. And you have to do all of this with shrinking budgets, lower staff, and you have all of this hurdles of I have to stay in compliance. And the federal government, which at some point is going to filter down to state, local government, at some point education, they now have CMC compliance, which means they have to validate and prove that they built out an architecture based upon the 7 pillars of zero trust. And if you're not doing those things, now you're not in compliance. Now you're getting fined. And in addition to all of this, a lot of our customers have cyber insurance they're paying for. So it just, again, it's a lot of noise out there. So when we hear some of the stats about ransomware and data protection from HPE, 94% of times that you get hit with ransomware, what's the first thing that bad guy or girl is going to do? They're going to try to compromise your backup, which is why is if all you have is backup and not Zerto, you're putting yourself in a very poor place. 57% of the time, nearly 60% of the time when you get hit with ransomware, your backup's been compromised. I mentioned earlier, 60% of tape backups failed. That's why you needed Iron Mountain. That's why disk came out. That's why technology changed and evolved. And you'll see how that's done that with us at HPE. Then, okay, my backup's been compromised. What am I going to do? Well, I guess I got to pay. Well, guess what? You're probably going to pay more now because they know you don't have a choice, right? I mentioned before, you're going to pay more. One example I always like to share, not necessarily a SLED public sector reference per se, but a healthcare reference. So last year, Change Healthcare had a huge data breach. And I live in North Carolina, and I was flying up to Boston to visit partners. And I went on Google, 6 a.m., true story. I typed ransomware, what's new today? And it said Change Healthcare, quote, hopes to have their data back next week. So Change Healthcare had a huge data breach. Their backups were compromised. They were down for 5 weeks. They paid the ransomware. Do you honestly think they got all their data back? No. You know, next year, stuff's still out on the dark web, patient information, social security numbers, whatever. But here's one, again, those soft costs. I mentioned how Baltimore County Public Schools had to pay for an expanded credit report for every single student until him or her is 18 years old. Change Healthcare, again, I keep talking about it. It's just not, I need your money. I want to get your news. I want to maybe have your job compromised. But it's how can they impact the public? So that's the next wave of this ransomware behavior we're seeing is this nefarious kind of activity, is those bad guys also went in and changed the prescriptions of patients. So if you're a patient and you always get 10 milligrams of blank, you just renew it, and then you look at it, it says 20. When did that happen? So that's what we're trying to say is you cannot afford as an organization to be down for months. And again, it's just not pay the ransomwares. How can I compromise the human aspect of what I'm trying to do? So what we've been able to do with HPE and our Cyber Resilience Vault is take our core, the core of Zerto, real-time replication. Again, in the earlier example, you got hit with a 10 a.m. disaster. Instead of going back to 6 a.m., you run production 5 seconds later, and you get those checkpoints. And as soon as we see something suspicious from an encryption perspective, right, you basically choose the checkpoint to go back to. It's very easy. It's very automated, as Joe mentioned before. As the system gets more familiar with our customers' applications and their data and their usage, those false positives can also kind of go away. So if we have a customer that's brand new to Zerto in the retail space, yeah, maybe everything looks normal, September, October, then all of a sudden in November, right, before holiday shopping season, like, whoa, we're getting all these notifications. But as we learn the system, they kind of go down, right? So again, we're taking the classic replicate and detect Zerto's technology and building out a much bigger solution with HPE. So again, this opening slide, and I'll let this build out. Again, we won't get really deep in the weeds here today. Certainly you can schedule time to do that. But we're taking what we like to call here classic Zerto. You're running Zerto at production. Again, ZVM, Zerto Virtual Manager, VRA, Virtual Replication Appliance. Again, we sit hand in hand with the host, right with and next to VMware. Again, you can run this on any storage, NetApp, Pure, Dell, Oracle, irrelevant. We're then sending, and I'll let this kind of build out, and I'll keep this very high level. We're then building out basically what we like to call the vault, right? So these solutions have to be in the same data center. And you're going to ask why, and I'll show you that here in a moment. So what we're able to do is take classic Zerto, software only, and introduce, and I'm going to keep this again very high level, 2 boxes. Does it get more technical? Yes, it does. But these 2 boxes are comprised of HPE ProLiant servers, HPE Aruba networking, and HPE storage. You're then basically going to send the encrypted information. I'll keep this very non-technical and salesy. The bad stuff, right? You're going to take it out of your physical environment of production and get it out. And there are so many buzzwords out there that I need an immutable, air-gapped environment. That's what this is, right? And what you're able to do is now take the bad stuff from the VRA in production and move it to the VRA into the landing zone, right? Then what we do is we have a secondary box, which is very identical to the landing zone, right? And you can kind of see that pictured out here. What we have to do then is physically plug the 2 boxes in. Human interaction needed here. You plug the 2 boxes in. When you do that, you cut the cord from production. So now you have the affected VMs, offline, immutable, air-gapped, insert buzzword. And now what we're able to do is in RAS, Resilient Automation Server, is we're basically able now to take the bad stuff, clean it, inspect it, validate it, and bring back those VMs into a clean state. We then take them from the vault, now the clean VMs, again, it does get more technical, and send it back to the landing zone. When we do that, we unplug the cord. Now the vault is totally offline. Then and only then we continue the connection back to production and bring back those affected VMs back into production to, again, allow business to run. If you don't have backup, my challenge to you, what do you have? And that is why you're seeing so many other vaults on the market today to say you need an air-gapped, immutable, separate from backup environment. You need this emergency recovery option. And that's what the Cyber Resilience Award from HP and Zerto brings. We size these based upon what we like to call t-shirt sizes, right? So 50 VMs, 50 terabytes, 100 VMs, so on and so forth, right? What I will show you in this next slide is, again, I preface it saying we're not the only ones who have a vault. But if there's one main difference between Zerto, Classic, again, our software-only solution, 10 a.m. versus 6 a.m., 4-hour data loss versus 5 seconds, there's one thing that thing brings out. It's speed. And there is no faster vault in the market today than Zerto. Every other vault I mentioned before, Dell, Cohesive is online, so it's different, right? Cloud-based. But Dell, Rubrik, Commvault, what's something they all have in common? It's built upon backup architecture, which is inherently slower than journaling. We have the only journal-based recovery vault in the market today. So if a customer has an outage, like Change Healthcare, they're down for around a month. This is an example with the customer having 300 VMs and 300 terabytes. So the time, again, speed may vary. So if you say, Justin, I'm only going to have 50 VMs and 50 terabytes, well, it's going to be even faster. But the example I like to share is this. At 10 a.m., right, you have an outage, right? And at 10 a.m. on, I'll make up an arbitrary date, October the 1st, your backup's been compromised. What I'm saying to you is if you're relying on backup and maybe another vault in the market, you will be down until November 1st on average. What I am saying to you today, leverage the Zerto replication, right, our classic, to get your production running, then have the vault, and by the same business day, you are up and running, ransomware impact removed. We have a 99% reduction in the total ransomware impact versus anyone else in the market. So if a vault is something that you're interested in to really help you in a cyber resilience stance and your posture, again, Joe and team can certainly help bring in the right resources, both at Prescriptive as well as HPE Zerto, to really kind of help you, again, mitigate that ransomware impact. Because it's not a question of if, it is a question of when you have downtime and what is the impact to your business and the services that you are providing. And then the last piece we have for today, and then we'll save time for some Q&A, get you guys out here a little bit before the top of the hour, is I kind of look at it as, okay, if I was a customer, right, or a potential customer or client, okay, Zerto's technology sounds cool. It does sound different than backup, right? It's software. I can deploy it anywhere. It's very fast to get up and running. I can use it for data migrations. I can use it to produce proactive testing for compliance and the auditors. You've then brought, again, a vault to market, and maybe that's something from a cyber resilience perspective that I'm looking at, that emergency recovery option, that if my backup's been compromised, I'm going to go to the vault. What I will tell you, speaking of vault, is we have a very large, well-known city on the East Coast. That's all I can say, right? They are choosing a backup technology for backup, but they're not choosing that backup technology for the vault. They basically said, I'm buying these guys for backup, but I'm buying the vault because it's faster. But the next thing I'd like to know if I was a customer, well, that's great. I don't want to be the first person to use Zerto. Who else is using Zerto? Why have customers chose Zerto, right? Because again, people know people. So I'll share a couple slides with you. First slide I will tell you is not super, or no, this is the pretty slide. The not so pretty slide's coming. But, you know, Zerto, we have over 10,000 customers globally. Starbucks, Walmart, United Airlines, right? In the wake of CrowdStrike, you didn't hear a lot about United. You know why? They got Zerto, right? But if I was a customer of a smaller size, a university, a college, okay, the Atlanta Braves use you guys, Miami Dolphins, that's not applicable for my business. They have different applications that I run. Who are the customers that have similar applications to me, and why did they choose Zerto to protect them and mitigate their downtime, right? Again, not pretty slide, right? But this is something I pulled from our Salesforce just to give you some perspective, and we have a lot more than this. But we are across the board helping customers in public sector. When I talk to the K-12 space, there in Texas, Houston ISD, one of the largest school systems in this country, leverages Zerto. They cannot have outages. Teachers need to take attendance. Buses need to run. Students need to log into Google Classroom. Students need to take tests. When I look at higher ed, I mean, maybe not having the best time right now with Dabo and Clemson University. Their football season's not going so well. I'm an LSU Tiger, so I don't mind that they're not having a good season, if I'm being honest. But again, we have a lot of customers there highlighted by the likes of Clemson, Stanford, University of South Carolina. You know, when we talk cities and counties and why they're choosing Zerto, I'm not going to go through all of them here, but you also start seeing kind of a sub-vertical that we have a lot of success in. Transportation, right? Metropolitan Transportation of New York City is a Zerto customer. Santa Clara Valley Transportation is a customer. Valley Metro Rail in Arizona is a customer. If I look at Huntsville International Airport, that is a customer. So if you are a customer that has transportation, planes need to fly, right? FAA is a customer from us on the federal government side. We have states using us. The two I would have mentioned here, the Secretary of State of Illinois is a customer of Zerto. And the state of Maryland, their Department of IT is a Zerto customer. And what the Department of IT called Do It in the state of Maryland has done is they purchased Zerto basically like hub and spoke. They have Zerto after core. Now they are able to roll out Zerto, right, to all those different locations who may have different needs. Because if you look at the topography of Maryland, customers in Western Maryland, you know, the Frederick, Oakland, Maryland area, it's mountains, right? They're worried about power and connectivity. Whereas a customer that they are responsible for another department in location on the eastern shore of Maryland, like Ocean City, well, guess what? They're concerned about nor'easters. But now they've basically been able to become an internal MSP to ensure the uptime from a Western Maryland customer into a city like Baltimore to the Eastern Shore are similar in that regard. And as you mentioned, we can see some federal customers, and we're also having a lot of success in the tribal space. I don't know if there's any customers here, but guess what? If a casino is not operating, that's not good for business, right? So again, how can they mitigate that power outage to get the slots up and running, making sure people can cash out and those kinds of things. When we talk about a little bit more specific, and we're coming to the conclusion here, team, why Zerto for education? I'm not going to read through all these slides. I will have Jillian, I'll send her to her and she can disperse this out to you so everyone will get a copy of today's slide deck. But the one thing I want to just point here, 30% of organizations took over a month. Baltimore County Public Schools, $9 million, the guy lost his job. Modern technology is not fast enough. And I mentioned it before and I said I was going to come back to it, and I will now. All of our customers have backup and firewalls and endpoint protection and antivirus. And we have another great partnership with a company called Keep It. And Keep It basically is backup for your SaaS-based applications like Salesforce. Big fans of Keep It, right? But at the end of the day, all of those are left side of boom. When it happens, that's not fast enough. That's my argument to you and my challenge. You need something different. That's something different we feel is Zerto. How do I get up and running faster? Because modern technology is not equipped. That's not what it's made for. And I mentioned it before, and I'll come back to it again. Zerto stands for zero RTO. That's what they made the name. True story, right? So there's nothing faster. So again, let's understand what are your mission critical applications that need to be running to generate revenue, provide services, right? All those things. And let's isolate those in addition to what you may already have from a backup perspective, right? Again, I mentioned transportation. I'll come back to it now. So this is a customer that maintains multiple airports. They have over 300 VMs, which again, is a subset of their total VM count. But you look at some of those needs and challenges. I need to be in compliance, but guess what? They're not giving me more money, and I need something flexible. Just because I love a cloud architecture doesn't mean the next guy or girl may not, right? So again, you're never locked in. Unlike Broadcom, which is the Hotel California, you can check in, but you can never leave. Zerto, it's irrelevant to us. Keep it on-prem. Keep it in, move it as you need to, right? And I need to make sure it's compatible with what I already have. And again, we have a lot of open APIs, and this customer is a Palo Alto shop. But how do I ensure that I am maintaining my business continuity goals? And that's something that Joe and the Prescriptive team also very good at helping customers with, that I've identified these applications are only acceptable for blank, for RPO and RTO. And once I've done that, I now understand backup cannot meet that, and Zerto, in fact, can. And then that's thought I have for today, and then we'll open up to Q&A. But NASA, right? I mean, again, we talk about having customers that are using Zerto that you may know. And again, I'm not going to read all of this, but the biggest use case for NASA is I need a multi-tenant environment. Kind of similar to what the state of Maryland is doing. But again, I also needed to be agnostic. Just because I have NetApp and that location as Pure, I'm not getting rid of NetApp to buy another Pure box. Like, I made my investment. That's the way it is. I need something flexible. And if you look at something why the FDIC chose us, again, not far from where we're talking about. Zerto was selected by FTC to migrate all mission critical applications from their current secondary site to a new site in Dallas, right? I'll go back to United Airlines. United Airlines has two main data centers, one in Chicago and one in Hurricane Alley in Florida. Why they chose that location, I can't answer that. But what I will tell you, every single time before hurricane season, you know what United Airlines does? They move all of Florida production to Chicago. The users, no performance degradation in any way, shape, or form. When hurricane season is over, they move it back, right? So again, think of the power of Zerto, that have your data always up and running, but also where you need it, right? You're not locked into anything, right? And that's kind of what we have. A couple of things, and then we'll open up for Q&A, and we'll check the chat, see if there's anything there. One, again, everyone who attended today's call will be getting a virtual Grubhub gift card for $25 from your friends at Prescriptive and HPE. I will make sure the deck gets to Prescriptive to send out. If you want to talk further about why Zerto may be a good fit for your environment, please reach out to Joe, and he can coordinate the appropriate reps from Prescriptive to talk with you, as well as our team. I will tell you, our sales rep covering the state of Texas is a gentleman by the name of Dominic, supported by his engineer Jamila, who again lives in the greater Houston area. But with that, that's kind of all I had to present today. Certainly appreciate your time as we come up to lunch hour. But yeah, open it up. Feel free to come off mute if you have any questions about Zerto, Prescriptive, or anything of the sort. I'll take silence as there's no questions. So what we will do as next, again, we'll make sure you guys get the Grubhub gift cards virtually. We'll make sure you get a copy of today's deck. And again, make sure you have some points of contact if you want to see how Zerto can enable you to really reduce the impact of downtime. And I will kind of close with this. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when you have downtime. And my challenge to you as a homework assignment, I used to be a school teacher, do you know what your mission critical applications are? Do you know what those RPOs and RTOs are? Have you had an outage before? That is something that we can kind of help you figure out. And again, Zerto is very easy to install. What I will tell you, probably should have mentioned earlier, it's very easy that when we quote Zerto, it's how many VMs do you want to protect? So I see quotes going out 5 VMs. So this is not as huge, multi-million-dollar purchase. I will tell you that. How many VMs do you want to purchase? How long do you want support for? 1, 3, or 5 years. Obviously, if you buy 5, it's more than, that's the way manufacturers do these things, right? And there's a very, very, very small line item for remote installation, right? And that's, again, something Prescriptive can keep you up. So it's not this huge lift and shift. And the other thing with Zerto is we're not really replacing anything. It's not like, oh, I don't like this firewall vendor, I'm bringing in this guy. This is something that's very easy, very automated, that you can get up and running pretty quickly to, again, keep business moving. With that, I'll go ahead and close it. I appreciate everyone joining. Stay tuned to hear more from Prescriptive and Zerto, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
looks like we have a question.